Most people think belly fat is just the stuff that you can pinch, but the real danger is the fat you can't see. It's called visceral fat, and it's quietly wrapping around your organs as we speak. In this video, I'm going to share with you 3 powerful tips to melt visceral fat fast. These are the exact steps my husband and I use to slash our own levels. Goran has cut his visceral fat by over half, from 9 pounds down to 4 pounds. And I've dropped mine from 2.24 pounds right after I delivered my twin boys down to 0.67 pounds currently. Here's what you'll learn today: what visceral fat actually is and how it sneaks up on you. The best way to figure out your true visceral fat levels, because guessing doesn't work. And finally, 3 strategies you can start using today to melt it away and reclaim your health. Stick with me until the end, because once you understand how visceral fat works, you will never look at belly fat the same way again. Before we jump into today's content, I'd like to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Element Electrolytes. Whenever you're making a big nutritional shift, whether it's cutting carbs, fasting, or starting a carnivore lifestyle, your electrolytes are something you cannot ignore. Getting the right balance of sodium, potassium, and magnesium makes a huge difference in how you feel. I've personally been using Element Electrolytes since I started carnivore, and it's been a game changer for me. They've got a ton of flavors, but my current obsession is their lemonade salt. It started as a limited edition summer flavor, but it was so popular that they've now added it to their permanent lineup. But if you want to keep it simple and you don't want any sweeteners or flavors, you can use their raw, unflavored version, which just has the minerals. Here's how I drink mine. I fill this bad boy up with ice and about 20 ounces of filtered water, and then I add in my pack of lemonade salt and mix it up. I usually drink about 3 of these per day, but your needs may vary depending on your body and activity level. Right now, Element is hooking my viewers up with a free sample pack with any order, so you can head to the link in the description. It's drinkelement.com/JennyMiddich. That's DRINKLMNT.com/JennyMiddich and get your free sample pack with any order today. So what exactly is visceral fat? Visceral fat is the fat that builds up deep inside of your body, around your organs. The problem is, fat doesn't belong there. Unlike the fat that you can pinch under your skin, this type of fat is highly inflammatory and linked to serious metabolic problems. It usually shows up when your body is metabolically unhealthy, or when you've met something called your personal fat threshold. That simply means that you've maxed out the amount of fat that your body can safely store in fat cells. Once that limit is reached, the extra fat starts spilling over into other places where it doesn't belong, like around or on your organs. Now, visceral fat is generally worse in men than it is in women. That's because women naturally have more places to store fat due to childbearing, which gives us a higher personal fat threshold. But certain ethnic groups, such as Asian or Indian populations, are genetically susceptible to visceral fat because their threshold is lower. I actually spoke to Dr. Nadir Ali about this in a recent podcast. Let's roll that clip.
There are certain populations, like for example, I come from a South Asian population, Indian people. Indian people, almost categorically males, have a very low personal fat threshold. Because if you look at Indian diabetes, these people are not very heavy. They have a BMI of about like 24, 25, at the most like 28. Very few go up to 30. So they go up to that BMI, but they become insulin resistant. They have high triglycerides. They have what is called metabolic dyslipidemia, characteristic of lipotoxicity. On the other hand, Caucasians are lucky. They become heavier and they don't spill as much triglycerides into the bloodstream. And so they will become insulin resistant much later because their fat cells and their adipose tissue protects them.
The bottom line, you want as little visceral fat as possible. Ideally, both men and women should aim to keep it under a pound for optimal health. And if we were in a perfect world, I would say half a pound or less would be ideal. So how can you actually tell your visceral fat levels? The most obvious sign is a distended belly, that hard, rounded pot belly look, especially when the rest of the body is fairly lean. You'll often see this in men. They almost look pregnant, and that is a strong indicator of high visceral fat levels. But what if you don't look like that? Let's go through some ways that you can measure it. First up is a waist to hip ratio, and this is free and easy. Grab a fabric measuring tape. First, measure around your natural waist, just above the belly button. Then measure around your hips at their widest point, usually across the buttocks. Divide your waist measurement by your hip measurement. For women, you want that number to be 0.85 or less, and for men, you want it to be 0.9 or less. Anything higher suggests visceral fat, and the further above you are, the more you likely have. The next option is a DEXA scan or an MRI, and these are going to be your most accurate visceral fat measurements. If you want exact numbers, these are the gold standards. MRIs are extremely accurate and don't have any radiation, but they are expensive and generally require a referral. DEXA scans, on the other hand, are widely available and much less expensive. You can search by zip code at DEXA.com to find one in your area, and if you're living internationally, there's a lot of international locations on that site as well. I'll put that link in the description. Different providers will give different report styles, but I've personally used LiveLeanRx and BodySpec, and both gave very clear readings for visceral fat. And when you're going to get a DEXA scan, make sure you're getting a body composition DEXA scan, not a bone density only DEXA scan that is used for diagnosing osteoporosis. Body composition is the one you want. A quick warning: don't rely on smart scales or in-body machines to get an accurate visceral fat measurement. They'll give you a score, but it's usually a black box calculation that does not hold up when it's compared to DEXA data. So now that you know your visceral fat levels, it's time to take action. Tip number 1 is one of the fastest ways to start melting it off, and that is an ultra low carb diet, such as carnivore. Trust me, once you see the results, you'll understand why this is such a game changer. So what does carnivore mean? It's simple. You cut out all the carbs, all the sugar, grains, fruits, and vegetables. And you focus on animal-based foods like beef, poultry, pork, seafood, and eggs. When I started carnivore, my own results were dramatic. On my DEXA scan before I started carnivore, I had 2.24 pounds of visceral fat. And now, 3 years into carnivore, I'm at 0.67 pounds. That is a huge improvement for long-term health. Now, if you have a lot of weight to lose, including a lot of visceral fat, you need to pay attention to the way that you're doing carnivore. I recommend a moderate fat, higher protein approach. Don't drown everything in butter or extra fat just for the sake of it. Stick to the fat that naturally occurs on the meat that you're eating. And at least once a day, swap out a fattier cut of meat for a leaner one. This approach gives your body enough protein for muscle and recovery, while keeping fat at a level that encourages your body to burn through its own stored fat, including visceral fat. Keep it simple, do it a little bit leaner, and your body will take care of the rest. Now, going ultra low carb with carnivore is the foundation, but if you really want to accelerate visceral fat loss, the next step is adding in fasting. And this is where things get really powerful. At its core, fasting simply means going without food for a set period of time. When you're not constantly spiking your insulin, your body is finally able to tap into stored fat for energy, especially visceral fat. There are a few different ways to fast, and you can pick which one works best for you. First off is intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is the easiest place to start. Intermittent fasting just means that you don't eat for a certain amount of time and then you only eat during a certain feeding window. The most common is fasting for 16 hours and then eating all of your meals within an 8-hour period. One simple rule that makes a huge difference is not eating past 6 p.m. Stopping eating earlier in the evening gives your body a longer window overnight to burn fat. The next type of fasting is water fasting. This just means consuming only water for anywhere between 1 to 15 days or more. My husband, Goran, did a 14-day water fast and saw incredible changes in his visceral fat levels. The next style of fasting is protein-sparing modified fasting. This is where you keep your protein intake high and your carb and fat intake very low, giving your body just enough fuel to preserve muscle while burning fat aggressively. I tried this with a 10-day sardine fast and saw a dramatic drop in visceral fat on my DEXA scan. Fasting is flexible, it's free, and it's one of the fastest ways to push your body into fat burning mode. The key is picking the version that works with your lifestyle and sticking to it. In my opinion, intermittent fasting daily is key, and then throwing in one other fast per week. So a 24-hour water fast, maybe a 36-hour water fast, or maybe a 24 to 36-hour protein-sparing modified fast, and doing that every single week is the best way to aggressively burn visceral fat. Now, fasting helps burn the fat, but to really lock in those results, you need movement. Tip number 3 is all about zone 2 cardio and strength training. Let's start with zone 2 cardio first. This is steady, moderate exercise. Think a brisk walk, cycling, or using a treadmill, where your heart rate is elevated, but you can still hold a conversation. Zone 2 is so effective because it directly trains your body to use fat for fuel. And over time, it increases your metabolic flexibility. To implement this, aim for 3 to 4 sessions per week of at least 30 to 60 minutes. It doesn't need to be intense. You're building endurance and fat burning capacity. You are not going all out. Now, let's talk strength training. Muscle is your metabolic engine. The more muscle you have, the more energy and fat your body burns around the clock. talk. Strength training also prevents muscle loss if you are losing weight or fasting. To implement this, focus on compound lifts like squats, deadlifts, presses, and rows, 2 to 3 times per week. If you're brand new, body weight movements like push-ups, lunges, or planks are a great place to start. To show you just how powerful this combo is, let's take a look at Goran's data. In September and October of 2024, when he was consistent with his trifecta, carnivore, fasting, and exercise, his visceral fat levels dropped quickly. But in November, December, and January, when he wasn't exercising or fasting as much, that progress slowed way down. The takeaway here, this combination really works. Cardio burns the fat, strength keeps it off. Together, they're the ultimate 1-2 punch against visceral fat. So there you have it, 3 proven strategies to melt visceral fat. The first off is to go ultra low carb with a diet like carnivore. Next is adding fasting into your weekly routine. And finally, combining zone 2 cardio with strength training. These are the exact steps that my husband and I use to bring our visceral fat levels way down. And the data speaks for itself. If you'd like to have a deep dive into a moderate fat, higher protein version of carnivore, I'll put that video right here on the screen. I break it down step by step. And if you'd like more personalized help, I do offer coaching hours. We can dial in your diet, fasting, and movement to help you melt visceral fat fast. Link is in the description. If you found this video helpful, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more content on carnivore and metabolic health, and let me know in the comments, which of these 3 tips are you going to start with first? Remember, visceral fat is stubborn, but it's not permanent. With the right tools, you can take control of your health and melt it away for good. I'll see you in the next video.